What's going on, team? Welcome back along to another week of Super Rugby previews. This week is round 5 in Aotearoa and round 2 over in Super Rugby AU. Today we're going to be having a look at all 4 matches coming your way this weekend. And once again, we're rolling out the special guests. And this week, he's going to be having a look at all 4 of our games. Brett, welcome back to the channel. How'd you go last week? And are you confident of more victories going your way this weekend as well?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on again. Yeah, I went alright last week. The margins, especially in AU, on my behalf, were pretty off. It's actually reversed. So I predicted a bigger scoreline in the first game and in the second game, and obviously the second game the Brumbies Rebels was a lot higher. So mess up there, but I think in terms of results, I was quite on the ball, and yeah, I'm looking forward to my Western Force coming back this week.
Yes, indeed, your Western Force are in action, so that's why we've got you back. But sadly, they're not playing till last, but we will get to your boys there from the West. But first things first, speaking of how the picks did go over the weekend, I tell you what, get this little golden boy back out once again. I may not have got the best picks, but I was actually third, I think, for the round. But still, top of the table. 10 out of 10. Just drink it in. 10 out of 10 perfect picks so far in Super Rugby Aotearoa and Super Rugby AU. I think, Brett, I'm having my best season ever of picking, and you know what? I've not won a single dollar on it either, so I'm almost an idiot, but it feels good, man. It feels good to get 10 out of 10. The yellow cap this week did go to a weird name that I can't hardly say. X Nabaya X. Great work. Up 21 spots to get the yellow cap outright this time. We didn't have the draw, so well played to him. And of course, I'm still top of the table. Gerbs is right up there, and the reviewer have fired up 15 and 6 spots, those two now to second and third position. But you got a long way to go, boys, if you want to catch me at the top. So I'm having an absolute stormer of a season. We do have, though, 4 more games coming up this weekend. I think, to be honest with you, Brett, heading into this one, I think this is the round I've been the least confident in my selections with, because these 4 games, I think, are really hard to pick, aren't they?
Oh yeah, for sure. I had to have a long hard think about when I predict my margins, and I feel like, yeah, like you said last week, I think was pretty straightforward in terms of the results and margins went a bit up in the air, but yeah, I think we got some variables this week. We got a lot of variables in the games, and yeah, I'm looking forward to breaking them down with you.
Excellent. So we have the 4 games. We'll start off in order of how they're going to be played. Not going to split it up pro competitions. We're going to act like as if it's one nice big competition. So we've got the Rebels and the Reds first up. Then we'll be following that up with the Crusaders and the Blues. Oh, that's going to be a doozy, isn't it? The WARATAHS will then host the Western Force. They're back in action. And then finally on Sunday, the Hurricanes will host the Highlanders. Oh, man, there's some tough games to look through there. But we'll kick things off with the Rebels versus the Reds. And to me, this is a game, the team that lost last week, but are probably the happiest out of the Australian teams, maybe bar one, and that would be the Reds. I think 2 teams that performed by far well above their expectation, and heading into this, big aspect of this game for me is that the Rebels are at home, but they're not actually at home, are they?
No, they're not. Unfortunately, Victoria have sort of mucked up in the COVID department, so there's not going to be much sport happening there. Well, no sport at all, really. All their rugby teams, their rugby league teams, the AFL teams, everyone's packed up and fled out of Victoria. So I don't think they're going to be having a home game for a while.
It's a bit of a sad point for them because it's going to be a long season, isn't it? With pretty much every match being an away match, whether it's a neutral venue or an actual away game, it's going to be tough for them just to not have their home base as such for them to go back to. But early in the season, though, I expect that's not going to affect them until later on in the year. But the Rebels overall, I think, have to be really pleased with how they played against the Brumbies back in round number 1. They were expected to get thrashed in that pack. We talked about it last week. But I think they stood up really well. I think they can be pleased with their forwards. But on the flip side of that, their backline probably was the area I thought they could have played well in. They were ultimately disappointing. I don't know what you think about this, but to me, it's that link. I didn't like Matt Tamua playing at 10, and I still don't. I just don't think he gives that real old school number 10 sort of vibe. He just likes to play himself, and he just doesn't, I don't know, he doesn't provide that link for me between your forwards and your backs. So I think if I was going to pick a hole in the Rebels, that's where they really lost out. Nobody wanting to see more from those backs, if again they can get that forward momentum from their pack.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I never really rated Tamua as a 10. I think back in the day, we used to play 10 for the Brumbies. He always had Christian Leali'ifano to fall back on a 12 anyway. So I don't think he's ever really been that sort of first choice 10. He's always sort of had a good 12 playmaking 12 to back him up, or that you saw the result last week. So yeah, big area, and especially that the Reds, they have a lot of forward dominance, so it'll be good for the Rebels to try and work in some back dominance over the Reds as well.
Yeah, and it's weird, isn't it, because Lolosio, the guy at the Brumbies, I mean, a new guy, relatively fresh name, I think for mine outplayed Tamua as a 10, doing his core role as well. I think he took on the line well, but obviously they're on the bye this week, so we won't be talking about that Brumbies team. But I thought he played really, really well. Matt Tamua, I didn't see enough of Reece Hodge until that last probably 15, 20 minutes where he come quite into the game quite strongly. Billy Meeks, didn't see him hardly at all. So that's my real question mark. And if that forward pack can actually perform again to that level against what is going to be, again, another pretty forward dominating team. This Red side, I thought, looked really, really nice. Fell asleep for a little period, which would be disappointing. I think Brad Thorne will be hammering down on that this week. And my other big concern for them is their discipline.
Yep. Silly stuff last week against the Tars. They really had them in the ropes in that first half, and their silly discipline and other areas in the game just being sloppy and not closing out the game properly nearly cost them at the end. It really did. The Tars really clawed their way back into that game. So if they can put the pump on in the first few minutes again, I think they're going to be looking to close out a lot better than they did last week.
That's so key what you just said there. The ability to close out that game. Now, I think a Reds team of, a year, 2, 3 years ago wouldn't have closed that game out. It would have got a bit too much for them mentally. They wouldn't have had it in them to actually, stand up to that sort of pressure and follow through to actually close that game out and get the victory. I think that's the difference, a big, big difference in this Reds team this year, is that ability that hopefully they'll see and keep doing this year as well, is to finish off those games and put them away and get the win when that pressure comes on. Because the Waratahs, as we knew, they are a team that never really go away. They're always going to be there or thereabouts near the end. So that was really good for them. Speaking about 10s, not playing in the natural position at 10, James O'Connor. Chalk and cheese, I think, with Matt Tamua, I think James O'Connor played pretty well. I really want to see him continue on trying to kick a 22-50 or a 50-22 and not to get cheesed off when Tate McDermott does it instead. But yeah, I think he had something different. He's a lot more dangerous runner. So I was quite impressed with James O'Connor and how he directed around that Reds team against a team that they probably would have gone in expecting to not pick up that victory against the Waratahs. So really, really good for them. It's been 7 years, so long. So they should be really high on confidence heading into round number 2. I mean, I'm talking up the Reds pretty hard here. I did in round 1 as well, and I was pretty pumped that it actually came through for me. Do you see them doing it again against the Rebels, though?
Yeah, I do. I think, like you said, I think a big part of it will be the battle between Tamua and James O'Connor. I'm not really fully sold on O'Connor yet at 10. I think he's better in the centres or at fullback than he is at first 5. But I guess he did have a good game, like you said. But I'm not fully sold on him yet. So I think that battle with him and Tamua, I think Tamua will be looking to improve from last week. So, but yeah, I think you've been talking up the Reds and so have I. And I think, like I always say on here, I'm a big fan of Thornball. I think I love Brad Thorne's coaching style at the Reds so far. So I think they're going to be looking to capitalize on that dominance again in the scrum and then transfer that over to the back. So hopefully Tony Tupo doesn't push anyone over or get another silly yellow card again. But I think with the form that they showed last week, I think Liam Wright had a really good game as well. Their young skipper. So I'm going Reds, but I think they're going to inch this one. Actually, I've gone Reds by 3. So I think it's going to be a pretty dog battle.
Well, now who's picking out the driving maul picks, eh? Goodness me. No, I agree with you there 100%. I've gone very similar. I've gone the Reds. I like this Reds team. I want to see them do well. I just hope they can pick it up again, and I've gone the Reds to win it by very similar to you, by just 4 points though, to pick up. It's going to be close, it's going to be tight, and I think that mental aspect of the game is going to come into it, and who can close out the match, the better between the two. We'll move on swiftly from the other side, of your side of the ditch, back over here to Christchurch and the oddly named Orange Theory Stadium. Still can't get used to that, but the Crusaders at home to the Blues. This is the game everyone's been waiting for, isn't it?
Oh yeah, as soon as I saw, probably after week 2, and then I saw the Blues performance, I've been looking forward to this game. I was hoping that both teams would stay undefeated until now, and they have. And this is probably going to be the game of the year so far.
It is going to be a cracker on paper. Now, the Crusaders, interestingly enough, have named, I think, nearly an interesting lineup. I mean, the big aspect, everyone's looking at this thing going, where's Will Jordan? They've left him completely out of the starting 15. He is on the bench, so what an impact sub he's going to be later on. But man, this Crusaders team, just a wealth of ability, isn't it? Just to take off Will Jordan and we'll start Harvey Lee instead, or we'll bring George Bridge back. Sevu Reece can start this time off the bench. Their team is just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I was quite surprised at that. Will Jordan was amazing last week, and he's been great for this whole year, and pre-lockdown and post-lockdown. So bit surprised there. Obviously, Sevu Reece, when he came off the bench last week, was immense though. Scored that try, and I'm not sure, did he score 1 or 2 tries? I can't remember, but scored some tries. 2 tries, yeah. My memory's a bit shady there, but Sevu Reece was great and a great impact player, and maybe they've seen something in this Blues team that they think Will Jordan would do better in that last 20 minutes coming off the bench and providing that little boost that the Crusaders often get in that last sort of 10 minutes and where they sort of run over people.
Sevu Reece was on fire or something last week when he come off the bench, wasn't he? Literally on fire. No one could touch him. I haven't seen a player step that well since I think, that prime Milner Scudder days. We just on a point and just dancing side to side. Like, we know he's a good stepper, but that was getting a bit ridiculous how he was just prancing all over the place and no one could really touch the guy. He was just insane coming off the bench. I think he had probably his best little cameo performance we've seen from Sevu Reece, and that's saying something from a guy who performs at a pretty high standard anyway. The wealth of talent is just crazy. You look through that team, Britton Hall comes back, and Mitchell Drummond goes back to the bench. They've got the 2 best 9s they could possibly dream of, just rotating beautifully in there. That back line looks amazing. The back row, it's chopping and changing around, but those guys still seem to consistently play well. So Tom Sanders is starting with Tom Christie. Fitu Douglas is a consistent one there at number 8. Of course, who was it? They've got injuries coming out their nose. Callum Grace is injured as well. Billy Harmon's out for a while as well. Ethan Blackadder's going for surgery. So an area that you'd seen at the start of the season, they're a bit shaky. They just keep churning them out. And I mean, Christie was amazing last week. He played really, really well. Big tries, and just a big game sort of player that just, where was he a couple of weeks ago? Wasn't even in the team. So the Crusaders just crazy. Let's talk about the Blues, though, on the other side of things. Now, you're back in the Blues. I've got that little inch from you from when we were talking beforehand, but they've made a lot of changes here that really make me scratch my head a little bit. Finley Christie starting, Harry Plummer's in there for Faiani. I don't like this. Harry Plummer at 12 starting. I don't like it at all. What are your thoughts on the team they've named?
Well, sort of playmakers coming out the wazoo, haven't they? They got three normal fly halves in their team now, so I think they've recognised how important kicking is against the Crusaders, and especially tactical kicking and getting as much territory as you can. So I think that's what their thinking was behind putting in Plummer at 12. I've never really been a huge fan of that sort of 2 10s at 12 and 10, sort of those dual fly halves. It sort of sometimes it works, but I think the majority of the time it doesn't. It gets a bit awkward in terms of flow of the game and whatnot, and especially having three normal fly halves out there, it might get a bit messy. But like you said, I've put a cheeky little bet on the Blues, but I don't really expect them to win this game. But I thought it's sort of one of those yeet bets, I like to call them. Sort of that $3. So then there's always potential, especially with how tight this comp is shown to be. So there's a lot of potential, and when this Blues team's clicks, I've been a fan of Ricky Wani at 13, and obviously last week I already voiced my love for Caleb Clark. I think he's a great player and he can really break open a game. So and their back row's obviously great as well. So they got a lot of players who can break open the game and can really worry a defense.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to say any English fans that are travelling over here to watch, he won't be putting on the Red Rose of England anytime soon because he has re-signed with New Zealand Rugby in the Blues. So that is Hoskins Sotutu I'm talking about with the back row you were mentioning there. So he's not going anywhere for now, but we'll see if he does don the black jersey or not in the future years. Yeah. It's interesting though, Harry Plummer I think is a guy that the Crusaders are going to absolutely target one way or another, whatever way they can, because he's not a guy that operates well when his confidence goes down. And I mean, if it was, if they brought a Barrett up, or if they had, another good level sort of 10 or 12 sort of player that could come in, I just think Plummer really does drop their team off a bit. And for such a crunch match like this, they are clearly going to kick a lot, which is a bit of a concern that they're going to play that sort of, kick the ball away at any sort of cost and play a 100% territory game. But that will, of course, depend on how the weather is as well, as how these two sides will adapt to those conditions. But it's hard to go past Crusaders. I'm sorry, Blues fans, but it's just really hard to go past this Crusaders side, especially at home. And when the last time the Blues beat the Crusaders at home was way back in 2004 or something like that, when that Carlos Spencer try. Remember when he ran way out to the corner and then had to kick the conversion to win the game and gave them the big fingers? That was the last time the Blues beat the Crusaders at home. So that is a long, long time ago since that was last done. So I'm not expecting that to change. I'm going to be going the Crusaders for this one. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think in my head says the Crusaders, my heart says the Blues. I love an underdog, and I think the Blues have been great this season. But like you said, I think I've got the Crusaders. Even though I put money in the Blues, don't ask me how that works. But I think I'm tipping the Crusaders. I think the Crusaders are just too class, and they showed against the Highlanders. They really survived that onslaught by the Highlanders. I think Highlanders really had a great game and really threw their best at the Crusaders, and the Crusaders dealt with it, especially closing out that game, and which we talked about when we were talking about the Reds. Crusaders, if they know anything, they know how to close out a game, and they've showed that over the last couple of seasons. So I think they're just too deep as well. Having a guy like Will Jordan on the bench is absolutely insane. So I've got the Crusaders by 8.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think they'll take this to like a test match sort of style of play, where they'll kick it out, they'll feel it around, they'll wear their opponents down in the Blues. And if there's any team that can do that, that's Crusaders. When things get tough, when they know they've got a hard game, they go back, they revert back to that sort of style of play, and they'll really grind it down. I think it's going to be close to 65 minutes, just because that's how the Crusaders play. And when they know that they've weakened them enough, then they attack. And I think, like I say, that when they got that Will Jordan sort of player to come on, fresh, electric, against tiring backs, that's going to be where this game is won and lost. But we don't talk about him much because I don't want to talk about him much, but Beauden Barrett, not for his attacking abilities or his kicking abilities, where I think he is going to be so important of how if the Blues can compete or not, is going to be his defence. Because he is going to be under pressure all night. Because the Crusaders are going to attack and they're going to break the line. They just do. That's how they play. And Beauden Barrett getting to those breakers and taking them out and making sure those tackles are made is going to be super important. He's a really good defender, and I think we're going to see just how up to it he is this weekend. I agree with you on the Crusaders pick. I'm going the Crusaders by 8 to get the job done over the Blues. I'm confident in the boys. You've got to back our fellow South Islanders. If the Highlanders can't do it, we'll let the Crusaders do it instead. It's always that good backup trick to have up your sleeve. Right, we're back over your side of the ditch, and here we go. The Waratahs versus the Western Force. Now, come on, stuff the Waratahs. Who cares about them? Tell me, what are you thinking? What's the feeling? How's the team looking? The Western Force going into their first match of Super Rugby AU.
I think the Force are tracking pretty well. From what I was obviously Force fans watching the Waratahs very, very closely against the Reds. The Waratahs are all right. In terms of normal Super Rugby standard, they're probably quite a bit below that. I think the reason they were able to claw themselves back into that game was just the Reds were just a bit complacent. But they did do well to get back in that game, and they really nearly got it there. And obviously the Reds were able to close it out. But I think the Force is tracking really well. Obviously, it's always good to be able to sit back and sort of watch your opponent on the bye and give us a little bit more time to get over there and and sort of settle in. And the Force are tracking really well. And in terms of what their lineup has been, they've gone for a lot of sort of more team cohesion than just unleashing their wallabies. So in terms of on paper so far, I think the Force are tracking really well, and they should be quite confident for this game.
I was impressed. I'll tell you, when I looked at this team that they've named for this opening matchup against the Waratahs, I was fairly impressed. It's easy to say, oh, the Force is just going to be a bunch of misfits that is going to pick up any old players they can, whatever's left over from the dumpster of all the other Super Rugby teams, and throw it out here. No. If you think that, you're completely wrong. Have a look at the side they've named, and they've got names even I know, and I have really sparingly followed global rapid rugby. But Kieran Longbottom, experienced Super Rugby player. Jeremy Thrush, any New Zealand fan will know what he's all about. Henry Stowers is another guy who's played Mighty 10 Cup here in New Zealand for quite a bit, and I'm pretty sure he's played Super Rugby fleetingly as well. Bernard Stander, another man who's been around the traps for a long time, and the halves, such an important area with Ian Pryor and John O'Lance. If you know Super Rugby, you know they've got a lot of caps under their belt, and that is going to be such a pivotal and important place to have that experience there as well. Marcel Braki, boy, he's like the current Matt Hodgson, isn't he, for the Force? He's just that guy that breeds that club, so it's great to see him still there and around. And that bench, Andrew Reddy, Chris Hober, Greg Holmes, Johan Bardall, all guys with a lot of experience, and of course Kyle Godwin to come off the bench to bring that impact as well. I'm pretty impressed with the team they've named, and like you say, there's a lot of players in there that have been in the Force for a while that have that cohesion, that they won't just be a bunch of singular guys running around. They've still got that bit of continuity that they'll get from playing together as well. So I'm quite impressed with them. The Waratahs, on the other hand, pretty much unchanged going to this one. Do you see them improving their performance from last week in that loss?
I don't know. It's hard to say. This when I was talking about variables, when I was talking about the overall round, I think the most of the variables on this game. It's really hard to say because it's hard to say what the Force are going to bring because it's been so long since we've seen them against a Super Rugby team. Obviously, they've been ripping up rapid rugby and whatnot, but those are against low quality opposition. So it's really hard to say how the Force going to match up. And I think Will Harrison for the Waratahs was a standout for me last week. I think he had a really good game in the 10 jersey. He's still a really young guy. So in terms of Australia's overall stock of 10s, it's good to see a young guy be put in that jersey, especially when you look at guys like James O'Connor and Matt Tamua in the 10 jerseys for two other teams. So he was quite good. It's quite good tactically and a fairly good playmaker. So, and obviously got Carmichael Hunt coming back into the bench, which would provide a little bit of experience. I hate Carmichael Hunt. I really don't like the guy, but he can play pretty good rugby on his day. So, that's a little bit of experience back, and obviously Michael Hooper is sort of that constant. He's he's probably the best player in Australia, and he has been for a while. So, he'll always be dangerous in the game in terms of the breakdown and whatnot. So. It's hard to say. I don't know. That's sort of the simple answer. I really don't know if they're going to be better or not. It's hard to know what to expect from this really young Tars team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I perfectly agree with you. Will Harrison, when I wrote the preview behindthepost.com, you can go check that out now if you want to as well. I struggled to really find an area where the Waratahs actually played well in their opening game. They did come back into that matchup against the Reds, and they almost won it, but who really stood out? Yeah, Will Harrison, I thought was amazing. That break he made where he just slid through a couple of players and fed his outside man for the try. Brilliant. Great. He was a standout for me. I thought Jack Maddox was good in patches as well. He injected himself quite nicely, but no one else really stood up. I thought Joey Walton was quite error-ridden. He got some terrible passes. I think half of the mistakes he made weren't his fault. He got some shockers. James Ram threw one pretty much right at his face like a bullet. So it's easy to pick on him, but I think that's that new player sort of continuity we talked about that the Force may have over them. These new guys coming into the Waratahs maybe don't have that on their side. So it's really tough, this one. Really, really tough one to pick. But the big question, though, are you going with the heart? Are you going with the shirt on your back to get the job done this weekend?
Yes, I am.
Well done.
I actually have a lot of faith in this. And only didn't mention before that I just throw in there is is Jack McGregor at fullback for the Force. He's obviously a lesser known player, but from watching Rapid Rugby over the last few years, I think he's about to become a household name in Australia. He's a very, very good player. He's such an exciting player. His counter attacking is awesome. So, Jack McGregor, just remember that name in a few years' time when he's a Wallaby. I think he's going to enjoy this young Tars team, this experienced Tars team, and I think he's in for a good season from the form he was showing last year and the year before. Anyway, he's been one of the standouts for the Force in both the NRC and Rapid Rugby. So definitely look out for Jack McGregor. But yeah, going back to the peak, high peak of the Force, I think historically, it obviously has been a while, but historically the Western Force have always been sort of a bogey team for the Tars. If you look at sort of some of the Force's most iconic wins in Super Rugby, two of them were the WARATAHS. If you go back to the 2014, the Nick Cummins hat trick that rocked the Tars at AMB Stadium, and then you go back to 2017, the Force's last game of Super Rugby before this game. The Force absolutely demolishing the Waratahs, and then Matt Hodgson kicking over the conversion in his last game. So there has been a great amount of great moments against the Waratahs, and the Force love that. And it was actually, they got Justin Langer, the Australian cricket coach, who's a really proud West Australian, to have a speech to the Force boys about the importance of playing for Western Australia, especially against New South Wales, and really sticking it to the eastern states. And this is what this campaign is going to be. This is going to be a revenge for the Force, and really showing that we really deserve a place in Super Rugby, and that 2017 decision wasn't the right one. So there's a lot to play for the Force boys, and guys who were there when in that 2017 game against the Tars, guys like Godwin wasn't there, but Braki and Pryor and John O'Lance and these guys, they really know what they got a lot to play for, and they'll really let the rest of the boys know what this means to them, and especially the Waratahs, who are Rugby Australia's baby as well. So best ways to get to Rugby Australia is beat the Waratahs. So I've gone with the Force. I think their key is going to be just to disrupt as much as they can. Just don't let the Waratahs get back into their structure. The Force showed in Rapid Rugby that they sort of love chaos. They love to counter attack, and they love broken play. So then they're going to be trying to disrupt the Tars as much as they can, and really use that inexperience against them. So I've won the Force by 5.
Well, you've almost convinced me to change my pick. That was such a rousing little upbeat speech of the Force. I think they're going to really push them hard all the way. I think the Waratahs are going to come home just enough at the end. I want to pick the Force, man. I want to pick the Force so much. And I really think Rugby Australia has missed a trick here by having this fixture the way around it is. I think it needs to be the other way around. The opening game for the Force had to be a home game. They want to really dig into the whole, get people back into rugby. What a way to do it, have that first game back for the Force at home. They will just, everyone's going to pour to get into that. And it will be such a massive, massive occasion. Now it's going to be, the second game of the season. It's still going to be huge, but this was the great way to start it. This was a great opportunity to kick it off and get what's going to be the most desperate crowd to be involved, have that opportunity to do so. So I'm a bit disappointed by that. I think if this game was at home for the Western Force, it would be a massive difference, and I would definitely be picking the Force to get that one done. But I think on this first night, unfortunately, as much as it pains me to say it, I'm going to go the Waratahs by 5 to just put them at the post. But revenge will be on the other side of the tracks. I have no doubt about that. Okay, we've got one match to go, and it is, well, I mean, it kind of falls quite under the radar, this game, doesn't it? Because the Force are back in Super Rugby, the Crusaders and the Blues, the two undefeated teams. It's a big weekend. And then we fall to Sunday, which has the Hurricanes and the Highlanders. A big match for the teams, but for the overall competitions, it's not really a massive consequence maker, is it?
I guess not, but we're sort of only halfway through Super Rugby Aotearoa, so I think what happens in this game, and it's unlikely, but say the Blues and Crusaders start picking up a few losses, this game can be important, and they're not, these teams are sort of the mid-table teams, they're not the stinker Chiefs, and they're not the sort of the god tier Blues and Crusaders. They're in the middle, and they're still very competitive.
So we haven't got the teams for this one because the Sunday game, they named the teams so late on a Friday afternoon. Pretty much the Australian opening game is starting before they name the team for Sunday, which is a real pain in the butt, to be completely honest with you. But I think we can pretty much say you're kind of expecting, you know what you're going to expect from these two sides as to what they're going to pick. Roughly, you're going to have a pretty much a sort of squad. But this is, I think, teams with a very similar record of obviously a couple of losses and the one win, but they've played a lot differently. I think the Highlanders, certainly for me, they go into this and playing the Blues and the Crusaders, and let's be honest, they went down to the Blues by just 3 points. That Crusaders game was not a 20-point difference. That was probably a 6-point difference until they completely went off the boil right at the end. They look like the team more likely to do damage against the top sides, and I just have them as quite positive favourites heading into this clash against the Hurricanes team that... Well, we can talk more about the Hurricanes and see, but the Highlanders, they've looked really good, haven't they? The opening games against the top teams, they look strong, and I think they look quite comfortably the third best team in Super Rugby Aotearoa.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with you. They just look quite crisp for most of that game. Though they really put the Crusaders on the pump for most of the game, like you said. I think Aaron Smith, whatever team Aaron Smith's on, I think their attackers are just always going to be so calm and calculated, and it's just you really can't overstate the value of Aaron Smith. And I just watched him last week against the Crusaders. I was almost in awe. He had such a great game, and just everything he does, he knows when to speed the game up, he knows when to slow the game down, and obviously the Crusaders just showed that they're a little bit too classy for the Highlanders, but I completely agree with you. I think this Highlanders team, and really surprisingly because at the start of the year, I think they became a bit of a meme, and no one was expecting really anything from them in this campaign, and they've really showed themselves to be that third best team.
They do have the loss of Josh Dixon, which I think is going to be quite a big one in the second row. He's quite a bit of a leader, kind of unsung hero, if you will, of that middle of the pack. The guy who does those line-out calls, leads that sort of set piece from the front. So that's going to be a bit of a loss for them. It's going to be interesting to see how they rejig that into that second row for this matchup. But aside from that, I think the injury to Josh Ioane has kind of helped them in a way because they don't have to force him and Mitch Hunt into the team. So Mitch Hunt's got that 10. That's his. Gatlin's the backup. It kind of gives them their position. It gives them, they know where they sit. Doesn't mix things up. So I think that stability has helped them quite a lot in the team. They just need to sort out the fullback. That's really the biggest problem I think they've got. Where's the Josh Mackay? That's the big question I think everyone is asking, although they did get the decent enough performance last week as well. So they'll be hoping they can get a little bit more from those positions. The Hurricanes, though, the Hurricanes, really, really, really concerning Hurricanes is their leadership. So much experience in this team, and it's almost embedded now into their culture of that sort of TJ Perenara and Dane Coles, experienced leaders, but their own discipline is so poor, and I think that kind of drags through the whole team as well. They follow that sort of style they play, and we know Dane Coles and Perenara are guys that can get quite rattled and lose their cool quite a bit, and that's their leadership, and that's my biggest concern for this team. How do you find that? Do you think that's going to be a big aspect in this game if the Highlanders can get under their skin, especially with that Smith and Perenara battle, like we've talked about, the importance of Smith could be a massive telling factor here?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think those two players are amazing players, especially Dane Coles. He had an incredible game last week, but, your two leaders are two hotheads, really, and like you said, they can get rattled very, very easily, and teams do go under their skin. And I think Aaron Smith does get under Perenara's skin when they do meet, because obviously those two are always competing for that 9 jersey. And Dane Coles spoke about it in his post-match interview. I think the discipline really let the Chiefs back into that game on Sunday, and I think Dane Coles, like you said, he does get rattled, and it really gave the Hurricanes a scare against the Chiefs. They obviously did close it out in the end, and it looked sort of convincing on paper. But I think for a good few minutes there, I think the Hurricanes thought their lead might disappear. So something they have to get in check as a team, and it starts with Perenara and Coles. They're the leaders, and they've got to set the culture. And if they're complaining to the referee, or if they're letting teams get under their skin, it's just think about the young guys in that team. That's sort of the example they're following. So it's a cliche, but everything starts with the leaders of the team.
Yep, dead right. I couldn't agree with you anymore on that one. This is a big game. For these two teams, this is a huge game. I was going to add some more about the Hurricanes going into this. More just the fact that I don't think they can. What you said there about how they can't, how they let the Chiefs back into that game. There we go. I've got my train of thought back. I don't think they can afford to do that against any other side in this competition. The Highlanders, I think, will punish them. They have shown they can be silky smooth finishers when they get things right. And we know the Blues and the Crusaders will absolutely punish them if they do that. And it could be really catastrophic for them. I think, yeah, you are lucky last week. And I think the Chiefs really don't have that ability to finish the team off when they've got that opportunity. They did get really, really close. Red cards and all flying out for the boys in the yellow. So this is a game I think that the Hurricanes need to adjust. They've been the slowest to get onto the rule, or it's not the rules, the adjustments of refereeing. They haven't really clicked onto that. Their discipline's letting them down. Their leaders are letting them down. And I think they're not going to be at this game. But I still think it's going to be close. And I've gone for a visitor's victory, as I would. How do you see this one going down?
Very similar to you. I think the Highlanders are going to be too class for them. I think Jordy Barrett was a welcome return to the Hurricanes last week. I think he really had some impact on, especially on their attack, and I think he'll do the same this week. But like you said, I think I'm going with the Highlanders, and I'm going with the Highlanders by 6.
Oh, good man. I'd like to hear that. I'm probably not even as confident in you. I think it's going to be tight. I've got Highlanders by 4. Every game in this competition is tight, and I don't think this weekend is going to be any exception. But these are all going to be fairly close, hard-fought matches. And I think, if you come out of this weekend 0-4, would you really be surprised? Because the fact of the matter is that either way of these two teams could quite possibly win the games. That's the way both these competitions have been going. So it's set for another exciting weekend of Super Rugby Aotearoa and, of course, Super Rugby AU as well. That does do it for our 4 matches this weekend. Brett, big thanks once again for coming on to the show, having your say on these games. And people can see your Twitter handle will be right smack under your chops there. They can come and give you some abuse and have a chat. We always like to have a bit of chat on the weekend about the games while the games are going on. Send some abuse to referees who are doing a rubbish job. Praise some good players, praise some errors, and have a bit of fun on there as well. So come join in. Make sure to follow us on there. And, of course, make sure to check out all the previews and reviews on BehindThePost.com each and every week, as well as some opinion pieces we've got going on there as well, especially this week with some of the bit of criticism on the Highlanders coaching staff this season. So that was a really, really good read by Nicholas Friday. So go check that out. I really enjoyed reading that article from him. So check that out, and we'll see you all next week for more Super Rugby preview shows. Until then, big thanks, Brett, and we'll see you next week. Take care.